What do we do as we sit on the edges of our chairs, waiting for the next Supreme Court bombshell every June? What are we going to do when a president of the United States rejects existing law and says, I have a pen and a phone? What are we going to do when Congress doesn't rise up and yet surrenders the power of the purse, among other powers in the Constitution? Are we going to keep begging members of Congress to help us, keep bringing lawsuits and hope that some judge will help us? Or are we going to take control of the nation's future through Article 5 of the Constitution and the Convention of the States? It's an honor to have former Senator Tom Coburn, senior advisor to the Convention of the States, with us. Senator, how are you, sir?
I am fine, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing, well, you know what? I'm not fine, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm watching all. Let me ask you a question, Senator. You've been around a long time. You've worked on Capitol Hill. You would issue these reports. You did the best you could to control spending, to control out of control centralized government. And we failed. So what do we do about this?
There's only one answer. Well, actually, there's a multitude of answers, but the one answer that our founders gave us that we should use is an Article 5 Convention of the States. I mean, they knew these things were going to happen. They looked at other republics and say, how'd they die? And why'd they die? And it's because there was no longer limited power, but there was total power. And so the only way to rein in Washington, it's never going to happen through our elected representatives. They don't have the courage. Most of them are career politicians. They may be great people, but their goal is to get reelected, not fix what's wrong with the country. And so the only way to do that is to have 34 states call for a convening, to sit down and say, how do we limit the power, the scope, the sovereignty, the influence of an out-of-control Supreme Court, an out-of-control executive office, out-of-control bureaucracy, and an under-controlled Congress that has given away most of its powers to those three branches. And the only way to do that is through a convention of the states. And my freedom is half of what it was when I was a young man. There won't be any freedom left if you let the Supreme Court continue to do what it did this week. The precedent on Obamacare was massively big, because what they said is, we don't care what the Congress says. We don't care what their pure language is. If we think it should be something different than that, then we're going to ignore it. So that made them 9 kings. And so they no longer are looking at the Constitution. They're looking at what they think ought to be done.
And Senator Coburn, it's happening time and time and time again. We don't have separation of powers as we used to.
No, there's no balance.
There's no balance. And the framers were most concerned about centralized government, weren't they?
Yes. And you know, the fact is the better decisions that follow the will of the people. The Americans aren't stupid. That's the assumption that Washington makes, is we're not smart enough to know. We don't have the requisite education, judgment, or wisdom to make great decisions for ourselves, so therefore somebody else has to make them for us. That was exactly what our founders were trying to get away from. And yet that's where we've ended up now, with the bureaucracies, the courts, the president, and even Congress.
Senator, how can it be that one vote determines a fundamental right? That is, it's a 5-4 decision. If it had been 5-4 the other way, it's not a fundamental right. Is this not insanity?
It is insanity. But the Supreme Court's way beyond what it was ever intended to be. They were meant to interpret in light of the Constitution. I mean, go, Mark, you're the best constitutional lawyer I know. Go back and look at all the decisions they've made in the last 40 years, or 50, where they don't even look at the Constitution or the original meaning or the history under which it was written, and have made decisions that totally undermine the future of the country. So you're right. This can't be a fundamental right. It isn't a fundamental right. Everybody knows that. But we have now called it that, and if you believe something different, you better watch out, because you won't even be able to express your disagreement the way things are going. You will be a hater, and then they'll prosecute you under hate crimes because you disagree with what Justice Kennedy has decided for us all is the law of the land. And there's no connection to the Constitution in this decision. It's
nothing.
Conformity to the will of a declining moral society.
Now, Senator, let me ask you this. What do you make of these votes in some of these legislatures where you have one speaker or one state senator in a committee. They're Republicans, but they're clearly not constitutionalists or conservatives. They won't even allow a vote in the floor because they know it will pass. We have to overcome that, don't we?
We do. But first, they all need to read your book because it gives you great enlightenment on why you should do it. And well, I'm serious. I'm going to be going to West Virginia because we had exactly that same thing happen in the West Virginia legislature. We had one senator who knew if he let it out, it would pass. And so the point is they're leading on the basis of fear rather than courage. They're afraid of what might happen. I want to tell you, we have a runaway constitutional convention right now. It's called the Supreme Court, the President, and the executive branches and agencies of the federal government. We don't get to decide our future. I can be from Oklahoma and we can decide it, but they trump everything we do. And they either trump it through law, or bureaucratic law, or they trump it by holding us hostage with money.
And what's happened, Senator, is they're enshrining their agenda in the Constitution, so the Constitution becomes liberalism.
Yeah, but this isn't constitutional what they've said today. I reject it.
No.
I have no respect for the Supreme Court anymore. I reject on the basis of the rationalization that is totally different than what this country was founded on. There are underlying core principles that allow a republic to succeed. If you abandon those principles, the republic won't succeed. So you can rationalize it, you can have a progressive agenda, but there won't be a country left anymore.
And what's happening, Senator Tom Coburn, is that the nullifiers, those who are nullifying laws, are at the federal level. They're nullifying state laws. They're nullifying American traditions and customs. The Supreme Court just nullified all the laws in all these states. So they're the nullifiers, aren't they?
Well, they also nullified historical doctrine. They nullified common sense, and they nullified any sense of any values, core moral values, that was used to bring this country together in the first place. So they are the nullifiers. But they don't see it. They see it as the here and now. They see it as the public pressure. They see it as what's popular. You know, Martin Luther King had a lot to say about this kind of stuff. He said, cowardice asks the question, is it expedient? And conscience asks the question, is it right? And vanity asks the question, is it popular? He says there's only one of those questions that are important, and it's conscience. Is it right? And it's not about what 9 people think. It's about what gives survival to the greatest republic in the country the world's ever known, and how do you do that in a way that is loving and accepting to everybody and treats everybody right, but still doesn't undermine its future. And that's what we've done. And I don't tip my hat to the Supreme Court anymore because I think they've lost their way. And so when you start losing any confidence in government, guess what happens? The unwind. You go back to the economic, where we are today economically. The reason we're not growing 4 or 5% is because nobody has any confidence in Washington. So nobody takes and puts anything at risk. Because what Washington's doing isn't leading us in a positive way that enhances our future. What they're doing is undermining the very core values that built the country. And I'm not just talking about this decision.
No, this is. It's been going on for decades, but we've now reached the real hiatus here, haven't we?
Yeah, and you know, when you call black white and white black,
I should say high point. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
When you call black white and white black, and you know it's not accurate, but you call it that anyway, and you're going to move forward on the basis of that, you're living a lie. And we've been doing that for a number of years with Supreme Court decisions and the loss of control of our freedom at the state level. And part of it is most of it is our own fault because we haven't been involved. And we allow career politicians, even though they, quote, have a stripe that says they're of our ilk, or whether we're liberal or conservative, they continue to vote in a way that enhances their position but not the future of the country. And we need to wake up.
And why are so many conservatives silent about this or absolutely opposed to it? I mean, I thought we believed in federalism. I thought we believed in state legislatures. I thought we believed in the 10th Amendment and the founding and all these things. What is to fear here?
Well, there is no fear that's real. There's fear that what you have is the John Birchers and the hard right social conservatives that we will lose our rights if we have a convention of the states. Nothing could be further than truth. You're losing your rights every day as you did today. Mm-hmm. I mean, what is a preacher going to do if he quotes a scripture that has to do with marriage that is totally different than what Kennedy said today? You think they're not going to be coming after those guys?
I think, Senator Coburn, that now the federal courts have taken over religion. That the federal courts are going to decide every time somebody thinks that they've been offended or discriminated against or something like that, and they're going to take up the secular position of the Supreme Court, and we're going to have a huge problem in this country. That's right. What I fear.
No religious liberty bill is ever going to protect that.
Mm-mm. Well, Senator Coburn, I want to thank you. You're doing tremendous work. You've brought and helped bring a lot of credibility to this movement. It is a credible movement. You and I didn't invent it. The framers of the Constitution did. We need to wake up as many people as we can and tell them, please, take a look at the Convention of the States. You have a wonderful website. I don't want to hawk my book, but if you want to learn about it, you can check out the Liberty Amendments. There's other stuff out there. You have nothing to fear, but I will tell you, and the Senator will confirm this, if we just sit back and let this happen, it's going to happen.
It is. And when you talk about a diminution in freedom, you're going to see it accelerate. And so we're not going to be free, and we're never going to grow again, and we're never going to prosper again under this type of leadership and this type of rule of law, because it's not the rule of law.
Well, Senator, it's a great pleasure to have you. God bless you and be well.
God bless you too, Mark. Thank you.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Take care. I've really come to like this man. He gets it 100%. You heard him. So why aren't more people on TV who claim to be conservatives speaking out about this? Why aren't there more people with big megaphones on radio speaking out for this? Is it that they don't understand it? Is it that I wrote a book about it? I mean, I don't get it. We need to come together, ladies and gentlemen. This is our recourse. You have all these people going on and on. The end days are here. The end days are here. Well, I don't know about you folks, but I have kids, and I don't want the end days to be here. We have to fight. We have to fight to the bitter end. That's who we are. I mean, we've been kicked in the gut repeatedly here. And once we get over it, not over what was done to us, but the initial shock and the depression and the frustration and whatever the emotions and the feelings are, we can't surrender to these people. It'll be the end of our, lifestyle and end of our society. We have kids and grandkids to take care of. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? The other people ask, the hosts and the guests on TV. And what do you mean, what are we going to do? We're telling you what we need to do.